Hey, sorry, I needed to break and go take some medicine real quick. So let me start over on this problem here. On the second page, the transporter for a toll bridge costs $49.50. The transporter with the toll is $4 each time you cross the bridge, and the only other option is a toll by plate, for which the toll is $6.25 each time you cross the bridge, with an additional administrative fee of $2.25 for each crossing. So this is going to depend. You really have two options here for your cost. And I'm going to let my y value be the cost of option 1. And I'm going to let y sub 2, let me go y sub 1, be the cost for option 2. Now, x is going to be representing, if you notice, every time you cross the bridge, it's going to impact what you're going to be spending. And so I'm going to let x equal the number of times that you're crossing. So let's go ahead and get the two equations. So again, we're looking at option 1, where you're going to spend, so y sub 1 is going to equal, then you're going to spend an initial amount of $49.50. But then every time you cross the toll, it's going to be then $4. So that means I'm going to have to multiply $4 times x, which is the number of times I'm crossing. Y sub 2 then is going to be that we have every time you cross the bridge, so in other words, we're going to spend $6.25 times x, but you have an additional administrative fee of $2.25 every time you cross as well. And so in this case, this is like the transitive problem we talked about on Friday. If y sub 1 equals this and y sub 2 equals this, but you want to know at what point, how many times do you have to cross for them to be the same, then you're really looking for when is y sub 1 equal to y sub 2. In other words, I'm going to go ahead and I can set these equations in equal to each other. So let's go 4950 plus 4x is equal to 6.25 plus 2.25x. And then on this one, I'm going to start combining my like terms. So if I have 6.25 plus 2.25, then that's going to end up being 8.5x is equal to 49.50 plus 4x. Now I'm going to get my x's on the one side, so I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And so 4950 is going to equal then 4.5x. And then the last step is I would divide by 4.5. So 4950 divided by 4.5 will give me an amount of 11. So it will take me 11 times to cross and for them to equal the amount. The next problem that we have is going to be including an 8% sales tax and inn charges the $141.48 per night. Find the inn's nightly cost before tax is going to be added. And so in this case, we know that sales tax is going to be the amount that we charge for the total. So in this case, then, if you are going to spend then $141.48, but then we're gonna find then the amount of tax that we're going to have to add. Well, the sales tax is going to be multiplied times this amount, so you're going to have then 0.08 times 141.48, and find the incomes. Oh. Man, I'm on the struggle bus today. My total amount, my x is going to equal the amount charged. And so in this case, I know that when I solve that, the amount plus the sales tax would be then 0.08 times that same amount, and this happens to be equal then to the 141.48. Now to solve for this case, I'm just going to add these together. So I'm going to have 1.08 times x is equal to 141.48. And then to solve, then I'm going to divide both sides by 1.08. So 141.48 divided by goodness gracious, 0.08. And then my value for X is going to equal $131. So that's how much I spent on the room, and then with a total amount of 141. Now, part of the problems that you have today too also involve knowing some of your formulas for area, perimeter, and volume, because what we're going to do is set up equations also utilizing those. So in this one it says the length of a new rectangular playing field is 5 yards longer than double its width, and the perimeter of the rectangular playing field is going to be then 324 yards. What are the dimensions? So I'm going to start off with just a rectangle because that's what my playing field is. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set my X is going to equal, and again, you could use width and length, but in this case, I'm going to go ahead and let X and Y represent my length and my width. Then that means that for my perimeter, I know that I'm going to also change this, the L and the W, then to X and Y. So to start off with, if I'm going to start off with the first one, I'm going to say the length of the rectangular playing field. So that's going to be my Y. I have the word is, so I know that that's going to be equal. So Y is 6 yards longer than double its width. And my width I'm going to let represent then X. So in other words, I'm going to say double the width, which is going to be 2x, and I'm going to also have then plus 6. The perimeter is the second equation that I'm going to be using. Now, typically, since you have the P equals the 2L plus 2W, and if you could, you're welcome to leave it as W and L. That doesn't matter. But in this case, my perimeter, I'm going to go ahead and substitute and change my value. They say my perimeter is going to be 324. That means that P is going to be replaced with 324. And then I'm going to let my length and my width be then 2 times the Y plus 2 times the X. And then I have two equations. And so it's set up so that it's easily solved with substitution. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. So I'm going to change this Y to 2X plus 6. So I have 324 equals 2 times 2x plus 6 plus 2x. And then I'm going to distribute, so I have 4x plus 12 is plus 2x is equal to 324. And I'm going to combine like terms, and I'm also going to move it right up here because I'm running out of room. So I'm going to have 324 is equal to 6x plus 12. I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. And so 324 minus 12 would be 312 is equal to 6x. And then divide by 6. So x is going to equal then 52. So if x is 52, then I can substitute it back in for x here and solve for my y. So y equals 2 times 52 plus 6. And so that's going to end up being 104 plus 6. So y is going to equal then 110. And because I'm dealing with dimensions, I'm going to go ahead and let this be yards, and I'm going to say 54. So I'm going to say my x equals, I have a 54 yards by 110 yards. A city cab charges $1.25 pickup fee for every 1.5 miles traveled. Diego's fare for a crosstown cab ride is $14.75. How far did he travel? So again, let's go ahead and say let x equal the amount traveled, or distance traveled. And so I'm going to say that in this case, I'm going to have a $1.25 pickup fee plus then for every mile I'm going to be charged the 1.5 miles, so I'm going to take 1.5 times x. Diego's fare for a cross-town cab is going to be for $14.75, so I know that this then has to just equal the $14.75. And so in this case, I don't have two equations. I'm just going to solve it for one. So I'm going to start off with 14.75 minus 1.25. And then I'm going to subtract 1.25 So I have then 13.5 is equal to 1.5x, and then I'm going to divide both sides by 1.5. And my x then is going to equal 9. So in other words, I'm going to have to go then 9 miles in order for me to have that time. The next one is solving variables solving for a variable within just an equation that has a variable. And so when I have b equals 1/4 times f times m, and I'm going to solve this equation for f. In other words, I'm going to try and get this part right here by itself. So when I do these, a lot of times I imagine kind of just using my numbers and what I've done before. So when I have the 1/4, if I want to move it to the other side, then I know that I can either divide by 1/4 or I can also multiply times 4. Because my goal is to get this value here to be equal to 1. So if I do that, then I'm going to have 1/4 times 4, and that's going to cancel out, but I'm going to be left with 4b on the other side. So I have 4b is equal to f times m. Now if I'm going to go ahead and solve for f, and I have f times m, that means I need to divide both sides by m. And so my answer is going to be f equals 4b over m. In the next equation, it says solve the equation for m in this case. So I have y equals mx plus b. So the first thing I do, I'm going to start, since I'm looking for this variable, I'm going to go ahead and move any term that is connected to it, so or added as and subtracted, I'm going to subtract it or move it over. So in other words, I have to go minus b and minus b from each side. So my y minus b needs to be just written as such. You can't do anything more with that. Is equal to m times x. And now, if I'm going to solve for m, that means I'm going to divide both sides by x. So m is going to equal y minus b over x. Okay, let's do the next one. This one you're going to have a is going to equal h over u minus p. Now, in this case, I'm solving for u, and u is on the bottom part of my fraction. And so what I'd like to do is have you remember, we can still manipulate this by, well, like the ratio problems that we had before, like on yesterday. In other words, if I multiply both sides of my equation times u, not y, u minus p, okay, what happens is then these will cancel out, and that gets the u on the bottom of the fraction. So over here, I'm going to end up with a times u minus p is equal then to h. Now, what I want to do is I want to go ahead, since I'm solving for u, I'm going to need to distribute the a into both to my parentheses. So I have a times u minus a times p is equal to h. And since I'm solving for u, I'm going to move this term over to this other side. So I have au is equal to, I'm going to add ap plus ap. So I'm going to have h plus ap. And then the last step is I'm going to divide both sides by a. And so my last step will be u is going to equal h plus ap over a. Now I'm going to tell you right off, I've seen this happen a lot where kids then go ahead and cancel the a and the a here. But remember, you can't, because of the fact that this is one term, this is one factor. So do not cancel the a and p. That would be incorrect. And so the last one we have is when we have the variable. So in other words, I'm going to solve for y, but I have two y's in my equation. So I have w equals 2yz plus 2yx. And notice if I'm solving for y, that means I'm going to have to factor the y out first. So I'm going to have y times 2z plus 2x. In other words, I'm just factoring that out. Then the next step then is I'm going to divide both sides. Because I'm solving for y, I'm going to divide both sides by 2z plus 2x. And then that will allow me to cancel this entire factor. So then I'm going to have 2z plus 2x. So y equals w over 2z plus 2x. Remember, I can also flip that, and so y is equal to w over 2z plus 2x.